Welcome, my students. And Brad is here today with me. We're going to be discussing tips for reading in English. Brad, hi, how are you?
I'm fine, Ellie. How are you?
I'm very, very sick.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
Uh,
that.
just been one of those days. um, but well enough to go ahead and do this live stream. I'm pretty excited about it. I really enjoy this story, and I know that this is considered a Christmas story, but with Valentine's Day coming up on Wednesday, I find this to be the ultimate story of true love, in a sense.
I can see that.
Um, so let's let's talk about reading tips before we start talking about the story.
Sure.
I think that our students have uh, things that they have to read and things that they enjoy reading.
Hmm.
And today we're going to be talking more of a casual or general reading, not for those Cambridge exams like ELTS and FCE and PET. I'll be doing a video on those things at another time. But today it's just for helping you with your general reading and things that you choose to read. And maybe some of these tips will be helpful to you if you're reading a book that was assigned to you by a teacher. But we'll get into that later. I'm going to switch things around here a little bit. Um, I've got too many things open. Uh, so today, let's start with our presentation that you will see in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, hopefully you can see the screen there.
I can see it.
Yay, so can I. All right, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is the tips for reading things in English. Um, Brad, since these are tips that Brad suggests to his students, and I agree with these tips. So, Brad, why don't you start us off today?
Sure. So, one thing that I tell my students is that you should be mindful, careful of your level when picking what you want to read. So, for example, my students immediately think, even though it's listening and this is reading, that the BBC is a great example to practice their English. Not when even I have problems with some of the dialects and vocabulary. So if you're a beginner or you're intermediate, you don't want to go for William Shakespeare or Charles Dickens,
Mhm.
because that then you'll get discouraged and you think you're worse than you really are.
Mhm.
Um, Usually the books I recommend are the either something at level for a child, as odd as that sounds. For example, my own Czech teacher recommends I watch Peppa Pig and read books at that level, and it works. If they're more advanced, I like to recommend those books where you have the English on one side and the native language on the other, because it's something that they're familiar with. What do you like to recommend, Ellie?
Well, I agree with you that they should follow their level. So if they're a basic student, they should read something basic. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of adult advanced books. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that should be something that should be written. Um, I like Roald Dahl because he has a series of books and it starts out basic and it gradually gets more difficult as you go along. And so I like recommending Rodal
Mm-hmm.
because of that. And it's got conversation, it's got, great vocabulary. It is British English, but that's okay. I don't find that a problem
Me neither.
um, with learning English. But it is good that it's a gradual process. I have a student that's reading Roald Dahl. His father got him the books, And his father said, "Here, read the story." And the story that the father chose was way above his level.
Do you know which one?
And uh, it was the witches. What was it
Oh,
called?
the witches. Yeah.
The witches. Yeah. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I said, go back, go back and read the Dirty Beast. You know, they have short little
Yep.
stories,
Yep.
and it's
Or
short, and it's got nice pictures, and it kind of. And now he's reading the Magic Finger, which is another nice intermediate story.
the Twits. Now that I think of it, the Twits is also a good introductory because it's a bunch of little short stories in an overall plot. And
Hmm.
like you said, it's got a lot of illustrations in it. And since you mentioned Roald Dahl, a series popular with my students would be Harry Potter for the same reasons.
Okay. I warn my students that are not quite intermediate, that they're low intermediate, because of the magic and
Mm-hmm.
the some of the phrases we don't use in everyday conversation. So I warn them about the vocabulary that can be a little difficult. My
Yes.
goal is that I want them to be able to read a story where they understand most of it, if not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for me, that's the goal. Harry Potter's great if they're upper intermediate, but
Mm-hmm.
basic and lower intermediate, uh, stick with things like um, Rodal,
Yep.
the Magic Bus. They have a series called the Magic Bus,
Yep.
and that's good for
Do you
students
mean,
in
sorry, do
school.
you mean the Magic School Bus with Miss
The
Frizzle?
Magic School Bus,
Okay,
right? The
yeah.
Magic School Bus, because they talk about bugs and they talk about the
Yep.
ocean and the sea and the animals, and it's in a fun way. So they're learning everyday things. So that's good for basic to intermediate,
Mm-hmm.
low intermediate. For my advanced students, they are able to choose things that they enjoy, and it's easier for them to decide what stories they like. I recommend things that are like um, biographies,
Yeah.
because biographies tell a story. Um, I have a student that enjoys things about like scripts, because they want to be a playwright. They want to write screenplays. So we look for screenplays for them to read.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's a very good tip, to be mindful of what you're choosing. Read something that is at your level. The other thing you can do
Exactly.
is try reading something that interests you, that's in your native language, right? So if you're reading something that's interesting to you in your native language, try to find that in English. Find things that you're interested in English.
Yep.
voanews.com, and I'll post the link in the description box below, is a really good website because it has basic, intermediate, and advanced. And they talk slow, they talk natural, and then they talk a little faster. So you can decide what level. And they have videos, they have stories, and it's a very good website for my for English students.
For my intermediate students, especially ones that like say, I want to use the BBC, I usually recommend Euronews, which
Oh,
is which is basically BBC for Europe. It covers the whole continent. And they don't do that, but it's a good solid intermediate English. And like you said, lots of video, lots of pictures. So that's usually the one I recommend for higher students that want to use news.
okay. Well, we'll post those links in the description box below.
Mm-hmm.
I mostly read biographies. I'm a
Yep.
big fan of biographies. I also like reading cookbooks.
Yep. Me
I know
too.
that's not something that you sit and read, but I like looking for different recipes that I want to try. Yesterday, I tried making zucchini bread that wasn't a sweet zucchini bread. Most zucchini breads have some sort of cinnamon and sugar, and I wanted something savory
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't sweet, like a banana bread. And the second time it came out okay. It was a very difficult bread to make. It was very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I also love DIY projects, and DIY is do it yourself. And for those students that know my channel, have seen me do some DIY projects, and uh, I love doing those. Um, I, when I'm learning or focusing on another language, Chinese was difficult because I don't know a lot of characters, and I know that if you know about 1,000 or 2,000 characters, you're basically fluent.
Mm.
I don't know that many as far as reading, but with Spanish, I was reading the newspaper in Spanish, and it helped me to keep up with the events in Costa Rica, what was going on, especially the entertainment section. And I was able to have a conversation, and I had time to look at the words in the newspaper or the entertainment section, and then use those words with my friends in conversation in Spanish. So that's also helpful, is if you read things that are current, you can talk to people about those events. What about you, Brad? What do you enjoy reading?
Well, actually, like you, I also enjoy reading biographies. In fact, the last book I read was a biography. I
Which
also,
one? Which one? Which
uh,
one?
it was Peter Longerich's biography of Joseph Goebbels, because I enjoy
Oh,
history.
okay.
And yeah, okay, he is literally one of the worst people to ever live, but it was a
No
nice
judgments.
biography. Sorry,
No judgments.
no, sure, we'll go with that on that guy. So yeah, I like to read biographies as well. I also like to look through cookbooks. Last weekend I tried chile con carne for the first time, and tomorrow I'm going to do pumpkin soup for the first time. So I do like to try new things. Um,
Both very good, by the way. I've had both.
yeah, yeah, I
Very
like the
good.
chili, so we'll see how the pumpkin soup comes out. I also, um, like you, if I want to try to practice my Czech, I like to read local news, like České televize or Radio Prague's native language service. Mostly because if you read things you enjoy, like for me with history or current events, it'll help your understanding and willingness to stay committed because it's something you recognize.
Mhm.
So you already know, like, how World War II goes, so you'll be able to figure out utok means attack, for example.
Okay, what's our next tip then?
Well, I would say that you want to take it slow because learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. I have students who get very discouraged because they decide to read Das Kapital in English and they don't know what they're doing. That hasn't happened yet, but it's something like that. What you should do is you should set a reasonable goal for yourself. For example, I like to read, but I haven't been doing a lot lately. So now I've made a goal of reading a chapter a day, at least a chapter a day. And now I'm reading a lot more. So you want to enjoy it, not hate it. Because if you don't like it, you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to keep working for improvement. Would you agree?
Sure, I agree. In fact, I tell my students that they should read a chapter and not a whole book. If it's a short story, like for basic students, they can read the whole book because it's a simple story.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something like Harry Potter, for example, we'll use that. Just read one chapter.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to read more than one and they're comfortable doing that, great.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're struggling with it, but they're enjoying it, give them I give them one chapter for homework. Yes, here, read this, read one chapter at a time. I also have them read the stories out loud and record themselves reading the story. I do
Mm-hmm.
this for two reasons. Primarily so they can hear their pronunciation, because when we learn a language, somehow there's a disconnect between the brain and the mouth. And I know this because when I was learning Chinese, there was definitely a disconnect. I thought, my goodness, my Chinese is so good. And then when I went to say something, it wasn't so good. The
That
intonation
has
was wrong
happened.
or the word.
Yeah, that's happening to me in Czech as well, because also it's difficult to think colloquial. So I'll know, so sedate, what would you like? And I'm all ready to order at the restaurant, and they come up to you, go, what you having today?
Right, right,
So
right.
also, yeah, my reading check is a lot better than my listening check. So I definitely agree there is a disconnect between the different parts of your head.
So if you're reading it out loud and recording yourself, you can check your pronunciation, right? You can say, you can hear if you're saying it the way the narrator's reading it to you, if you're listening to an audiobook. If it's not an audiobook, you can listen to your own pronunciation and think, does that sound like a native speaker? Am I adding S's to words that don't have S's, or R's where there's no R's? And so if you're reading, especially if it's just a chapter, record yourself reading it. The next tip is to have a good English dictionary nearby. Don't translate, okay? Don't translate all the words. Look it up in an English dictionary. See if you understand the English definition. If you don't understand the English definition, then look it up in your translator or your dictionary, your native dictionary, your native language dictionary. But use that English dictionary first. Remember to underline words that you don't understand or that you need to look up. And you don't want to do something where you're reading a book. And I'm going to give you an example. Oops. I'm going to give you an example. I'm reading a story to my students. So let's say I'm reading this book, right? Oop, disappeared on you.
You have ascended.
You can't. Okay. So you're reading the book, right? And you're, oh, wait, what's this word? I have to look it up. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, what's this word? Oh, I have to look it up. And if you're constantly doing this, you're going to get frustrated.
Yep.
Don't look at the word, stop, look at the word, stop. Don't go back and forth. Don't look, stop, look, stop. Underline the word first, read the paragraph, read the page, see if you can guess the meaning of the word. See if you can understand the meaning of the word. And if you don't, then at the end of the page or end of the paragraph, look up the words. Not the sentence. You have to read the paragraph because that's the context of that sentence. It's in context to what you're reading. Sometimes it only takes a paragraph for you to go, I understand. It might take a couple of paragraphs. Oh, I get it. So if you're finding that you're underlining a lot of words, read the whole page and then go back and look it up. Most of the time you can guess. Most of the time, I think, especially with advanced students, you can guess the meaning quite easily. Most of the time.
Sure.
I use several, I provide several online dictionaries for my students. What sites do you suggest to your students?
I usually suggest things like Merriam-Webster's. I also suggest having just a good app on your phone because that's a lot easier to have nearby than a giant dictionary. And usually I recommend the same dictionary as an app.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we'll post our favorites in the description box below. Okay.
And I should also add, Ellie, that since what you were just saying is don't stop, don't look, stop, look, stop, look, stop, you probably shouldn't read to understand every last word. Because if you understand the context, you probably will get it. For example, if you don't know the word overjoyed, but you see that it's a very good event and people are happy, you'll probably know, it must mean very happy. And usually what I've noticed at least with me in Czech and my students with English, if you really struggle over a word, it tends to stick in your head more easily.
Mhm. Oh, I agree.
Yep.
Um, my students have found that helpful by underlining the words and looking them up later.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives them a vocabulary list to work on for the week. My students have to choose 5 new vocabulary words for each week and then practice using them. Not make sentences for them, but try
Mm-hmm.
to use them. Learn to spell them, learn the meaning of them. I don't have my students make sentences because
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather them make a story and use the sentences in context. I know a lot of English teachers that say, "Here's a word, make a sentence. Here's a word, make a sentence." But then you forget the word. But if you say, "Here are 5 words," use them in a story, a short story. Then they take those words and make a story.
Mm-hmm.
They're using it in context, and they're going to remember that word quicker than "Here's a word, make a sentence."
Mm-hmm.
When I was in school, we never did that. We had vocabulary words. We memorized the definition and memorized how to spell them, but they never said, make a sentence. we, we read books and we looked for the words and underlined the words in our stories.
Mm-hmm. And Ellie, what should people do with all these new words that they're learning?
Well, keep a notebook. You recommend using an app. That's another way to do it if you like keeping things on your tablet or your phone.
Mm-hmm.
But keep a journal, and it's a good idea to add any new words that you're reading to your list, and then try to use them when you're speaking as well. And there's some words that you'll probably never use, like onomatopoeia.
Mm-hmm.
Onomatopoeia. I've done a video on onomatopoeia. And I'm going to post the video link in the description box below. But I've never used that word in conversation. And for those
Yeah,
that
neither
don't know
have
what
I.
it is, it's a word that means it's a word that imitates sound or describes a sound like boom, bang, meow.
Mm-hmm.
Those are onomatopoeias. Okay, tick, tick, tick. That's just not a word we use for general conversation. Um, yeah, I assume you would agree with that. Yes?
Yes, yes, definitely. Because it's something that like I try to tell my students a lot. Because I what I point out like to point out to them is I don't go to McDonald's and I say, "Felicitations, citizen, I am endeavoring to obtain consumables." I say, "I'd like a cheeseburger, please." It's about
Right.
communication, not about, you know, being Oscar Wilde the second week of your English. And that is something that it's difficult for them to grasp sometimes, but that's what I try to get them to understand is that even native speakers have a relatively basic vocabulary just because that's all they need.
Right.
Um,
Wherefore art thou cheeseburgers?
I prefer pizza anyway. No, I mean, a lot of the biographies and history books I read are written by British authors, and they love adjectives that I've
Mm.
never seen before. So it's helpful that I prefer ebooks, so I can just tap and see the definition immediately. But usually, I just assume, oh, okay, Goebbels is very angry at something,
All
which
right.
he usually was.
So those are the tips that I find that are helpful to most students that are learning English as a second language. Just some general things to keep in mind. I hope these tips will help you. Now we're going to be talking about our story, The Gift of the Magi. Um, if you haven't read the story, if you haven't listened to it, uh, the synopsis, a short synopsis of it, oh, and that's a good word, synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a shortening of the story. Um, it means, short summary, the Gift of the Magi is a short story by O. Henry. O. Henry. It was published in the New York Sunday World in 1905 and then collected in the 4 million 1906. So it was about 1905, 1906, the story was published. The story's main characters are James and Delia, right?
Hmm.
I didn't know if it was Della.
I thought
I
it was
want to.
Della.
Okay, Della.
It's
Yeah.
because I've seen
James and
Della in other places, and it's Della. So.
Yeah, I would say Della. And that's another thing with names. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. It doesn't matter. It's not so important. But James and Della, Dillingham. What a funny name, Dillingham. Dillingham Young. Now they're a young couple who, well, despite their poverty, individually resolved to give each other a special gift on Christmas Eve. Um, Della has long, beautiful hair and sells it in order to buy a platinum chain for Jim's antique gold watch that was a family heirloom. That's another good word, heirloom. It
Hmm.
means a gift that's been passed down from generation to generation or grandfather to father to son. And so Jim has it, and he pawns his treasured watch to purchase a jeweled tortoiseshell combs.
What does pond mean, Ellie?
Pawn. Uh,
Mm.
well, it means that you have something of value and you take it to a shop and they give you money for your valued item.
Hmm.
So, for example, if I wanted to sell my gold ring, it's a white gold ring, I could take this to a pawn shop and see how much money they would give me for it.
Hmm.
So that's pawning something. Have you ever pawned anything?
I don't think I have. Um, Nor do I have anything worth pawning.
I pawned some jewelry once. I had some jewelry
Okay.
that I pawned. I was going from the UK to China with my dog, and my dog's
Mm.
ticket was very expensive. So I needed to find a way to get money for my dog, and so I pawned a bunch of jewelry to get his ticket. I wasn't really too sad about it because I didn't have any emotional connection to the jewelry. It was just things that I found at secondhand shops or estate sales. So, but it must be a terrible feeling to pawn something that you cherish. And that's what Jim did. He pawned his watch that he loved. I mean, this is something that his family had for generations. Um, so, so he pawned his watch, and Della, well, she ends up cutting her hair.
Mhm.
And you can guess what happens. Jim sees that Della has cut off her hair, and she sees that Jim had sold his watch. So that's basically the story.
Mhm.
So let's look at the vocabulary words before we start asking the questions here. Um, prosperous, successful, and wealthy. Vanish. Whoops, I ended on the same line. Vanish, to disappear. Now, normally when I do vocabulary words, I don't like doing them this way. When I give them to the students, I hide the definitions. I hide the definitions
Mhm.
and I'll say ecstatic. What do you think that means? What do you think ecstatic means? So when I'm teaching vocabulary, I would say the word, but then um, see if the student or students could tell me the definition of the word. But today, we're just going to go through them. And I was going to put the page number of where you can find these words. Aha, but I'm an evil teacher. And this is something you can do, my students, is try to find these words in this short story. So we have vanish, disappear. Do you want to do some of these?
I'm fine.
Ecstatic. Yay. Extremely happy. Ecstatic.
Uh-huh.
Predominant. It's like the main or dominating thing, something that's striking. Predominant.
Uh-huh.
Inconsequential. Inconsequential. Yeah, not very important. It's inconsequential. Generous. Giving. You give and give and give and give. You're a generous person.
Uh-huh.
Mammoth, something that's huge, big. It's mammoth. Gradually. Changing slowly, step by step, gradually, gradually. Instigate.
Uh-huh.
To urge or stir up, to be the starter of something, right? You instigate
Uh-huh.
it. Depreciate is to reduce value, right? So, for example, this white gold ring, let's say, I don't remember what it was. Let's say it was let's say it was $500. I don't remember what it was. But now if I try to sell it, I probably get what, $50 maybe. Maybe not even that, maybe 25. So it depreciates over time. Like your car. Think about if you have a car. If you bought it new, you're not going to get that new price 5, 6, 7, even a year. Okay, I'm running out of voice though. You might have to take over.
Okay.
Imputation. The
Yeah.
act of imputing or go ahead.
I was just going to read it like the act of inputting.
Right.
Accused of or attributed to something. Insinuation.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that to happen to your boss. You don't want your boss to take you in problems.
Right. And accuse you of something.
Yeah, j'accuse. No, you don't want that. Okay. Or what about parsimony? The quality of being careful with money or resources, thrift or stinginess. This is something Ellie and I are probably quite familiar with, being English teachers in another country, right, Ellie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be very careful.
Unless it's Lego for me. Then
go ahead.
I say, unless it's Lego for me, then it's no problem.
Spend away. Especially if you have to leave, or if you're in a situation where you have to leave the country to come back in order to get a new visa or something. Then you really have to save up.
What about truant? Yeah, truant. Someone who avoids doing his or her duty. Someone who is skipping, not going to school without permission. I don't like truant students. I don't know about you, Ellie.
No, I guess if they don't show up, they still have to pay me. But
oh yeah, that's exactly it too. I have someone today that was truant, but they've already paid me, so it's fine.
There you go. Have you ever been truant in school? When you were in school?
I mean, I'm almost a 39-year-old man. It's been a while.
When you were in school.
Nope.
Were you
ever I was never truant. No, I was never truant.
I was.
I
had a neighbor friend who convinced me that I could skip school. And so we skipped school and it was great. It was fun. It was great. She wanted to skip another day, not the same day in a row, but it was another time. And I said, sure, okay, no problem. But I had left something at home and they found out that I wasn't at school. And they knew that my neighbor friend was not, was one that probably got me to skip school. So never did that again, though, let me tell you. It was horrible.
Good.
Truant officer came, picked me up, took me to school. It was embarrassing. It was scary.
I don't
Truant
even know if
officer.
my town had truant officers.
We did. We had a truant
Okay.
officer. He came in regular clothes. He didn't have a uniform, didn't carry a
Mhm.
gun. We weren't handcuffed, but he did pick us up in a car. It was an official car, and he drove us to school. So
Mm.
I I didn't get into trouble with the school, but at home.
Oh yeah.
Uh, okay, let's look at our discussion of this story.
Hmm.
Okay, so how essential is the setting of this story? Could it have taken place at another time?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think it's non-essential because the idea of not having enough money is a timeless factor, right?
Hmm.
And you think about American history, and 30 years is going to be the Great Depression. So
Hmm.
that's definitely a time when this situation could happen. And today, maybe someone will, give up something they want for their boyfriend's Xbox controller while he sells his Xbox to get her, a new leash for her dog. Okay, not that silly, but yeah, I don't think it is required to be at the turn of the 20th century. I think the main idea is timeless. It works anytime, any place.
Hmm. Hmm.
And Ellie, what do you think about the sacrifices of Jim and Della? Do you think they compare to each other? I have an opinion, but
Well,
what about you?
ultimately, Della's hair will grow back. I
That's
mean, if I were to cut
exactly
my
what I was
hair,
going to say.
it would grow back.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, however, sold his family heirloom, and that cannot exactly be replaced.
Yep.
I believe that Jim has more entitlement to crying over his loss than
Mm.
Della does, especially since Jim doesn't actually care if Della's hair is short. And Della rarely leaves the house, I think.
Mm. Yes, there might Jim might be crying in bed for a little bit tonight.
So you would agree with that then?
Yeah, I think Jim made the bigger sacrifice than I mean. In fact, Della herself says in the story, "Oh, but my hair will grow back."
Yeah, yeah,
And I
exactly.
noticed that Jim is kind of just going,
Ah, damn.
"Well, I don't know. I don't think it's even that. I think he's just like, because he's like probably thinking that too."
I don't think they thought that through. I think um, I don't think he thought that through. I think he could have maybe made her something, do it,
Well,
put something together or poem or, obviously Della knew that they didn't have a lot of wealth. They weren't
mm-hmm,
rich. So obviously if he wrote her a little poem or
mm,
made her something, I don't know how good he is with, making things. But I think something like that made it a special evening, maybe cooked for her. And back in those days, the women did all the cooking, but
mm.
something than selling off his family heirloom.
Yes, but at the same time, I think an important element of fiction is that the action should flow naturally from the character. Like,
Yeah.
for example, if someone really loves their brother and then they watch them get murdered, they shouldn't become the best friend of the person who murdered them and join him in murdering the world, for example. That would be a very bad story. I think that Jim giving up his watch like that shows how much he cares and why he
Yeah.
cares.
Yeah. I
So
understand that.
sure, he didn't think it out, but I think it works within the logic of the story.
Mm. Mm.
So, do you think that Jim and Della appreciated their gifts?
No, not really. I think they might have, uh, well, maybe they do appreciate their gifts, although they weren't usable.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well,
I guess it was the thought that counted, right? Because both of them had to get rid of something that they, you know, cared about or loved.
uh-huh.
It was something that were their prized possessions, in order to give the other person a gift.
Mhm.
So maybe.
Well, I mean, Della's gift will eventually be usable, and Jim's is actually more usable because then he can take the chain and pour Della for what he did,
Mm,
what she did. But
yeah,
no, he loves her.
yeah.
Um, there's that old saying, "It's the thought that counts,"
Yep.
and I think that is the message of the story: is that
Mhm.
they gave up their most prized possession to bring joy to someone they love,
Right.
and it's hard to fault that.
Hmm.
I mean, there is if they really want to, there is a chance Jim could get his watch back. They could return the the um the combs, and then he could go back to the pawn shop, be like, "Oh, I made a mistake." And if it's already been sold, maybe he could track down the person who bought it and explain it. So there is some hope that Jim could get his watch back.
Mm.
Maybe it's the sequel,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
might
the,
be.
the Return of the Magi,
Right, right.
the layaway of the Magi, if you will.
I would think that if they had a return policy, she
Mm,
could return her combs and then go back and get the watch. But
mm,
as I said earlier, when you pawn something, you don't always get its value. So she could pawn her combs and get the money, but still might not have enough money to get the watch out of hawk.
mm,
When you hawk something, you pawn something, you get it out of hawk, right? So you pawn it,
mm,
then you take it out of hawk.
mm,
It's a funny word too.
mm.
So yeah.
Okay.
um, would the personalities of Jim and Della change if they were better off financially? That's a guess, I know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it depends. I mean, personally, I know of poor people that are absolutely terrible and rich people who are really great. I mean, so I don't think necessarily having wealth would change their personality. They might be less inclined to be like, "Oh, I must show my love," because they don't have. It's not as big a deal. But I don't necessarily think they would be different. What do you think, Ellie?
It's hard to say. I I've never been rich.
Me neither.
so so um I couldn't say, to be honest. Um I I think if you're rich, you can just go buy whatever you want to buy.
Hmm.
Um and so I don't think they would have pawned their things. I don't think he would have pawned his watch. I don't think she would have cut her hair off. That wouldn't have happened because they would have had the
Hmm.
money to buy the things. They would have had the money to buy the chain and the combs. It wouldn't have been an issue.
Hmm.
Would that mean that because they had the money, they could afford to buy these things? It's not as precious. It's not as,
Hmm.
I don't know, it doesn't mean as much, right?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, um, like I have a lot of positive memories of my father getting me like, something about the Titanic, which is a special thing for me in history when I already had a bunch of things about the Titanic. So it wasn't necessarily that I remember that particular book or computer game or whatever. I remember him doing that.
Mm,
So, but I still think he would be that kind of a father, even if he had like billions of dollars.
mm.
So, I mean, I don't necessarily think they'd be different just if they were richer. Um, but because the story is so short and it is so, this is the what happens, we don't
Mm.
really have enough of a sense of Jim and Della to say either way. But
Right.
I think they loved each other for themselves, not their bank accounts. So I think they would be largely the same.
Mm. Okay.
Mhm. So, Ellie, at the end of the story, Jim and Della are compared to the Magi, which were a group of wise men. Why do you think the story compares Jim and Della to the Magi?
Well, I think the true story, as you said, lies in the sacrifice that it involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
They both sacrificed something they loved for the person that they loved. And the Magi gave their most valuable possession to, to sacrifice a gift himself.
Mm-hmm.
Both characters in the story and in the biblical Magi give their most precious belongings for the benefit of someone else. So, so I think that's why they're comparing it. It's the gift,
Mm.
it's the sacrifice.
I think it's more, uh, it's that, but I think it's also the idea of wisdom because O. Henry at the end does go ahead and go, "Oh, what idiots!" But he also points out that they were the wisest of all because they understand it's not the gift that counts, it's the effort. Like like for example what I said earlier with my father, he drove in a snowstorm to get something about the Titanic for me even though I wasn't even home. I was away for the weekend. He still did that.
Mm.
So that's what I remember more than the game itself, that he did that gesture for me. So um I don't necessarily agree that they were unwise. I think that it's more about the wisdom of the Magi than the sacrifice, at least in my interpretation.
Okay.
And Ellie's students, that's the thing about fiction. I can think something is a masterpiece, and Ellie can think it is the worst thing that she's ever read. It's all about how you interpret and how you feel reading the
Right,
story.
right. What's your impression of the story?
Exactly.
How important ooh, how important
How
do you
important do I think
yeah, that's
appearances
you.
are?
Yeah.
Um, meh.
Uh, meh.
I prefer wearing t-shirt and jeans, shorts if it's good weather as much as possible. So I don't really care about appearances. I know that that is not a culturally normal thing,
Mm.
but I personally think it is more important to be a competent worker than an incompetent, well-dressed worker. What do you think, Ellie? How important do you think they are?
It just depends on it depends on who you're trying to impress.
Mm. Oh yes, like if if
Mm.
I got a text now that Petr Pavel, the president of the Czech Republic, wants me to help him with his English, obviously I'm going to wear something a little nicer because of the oh.
Yeah.
But if it's just every day, no, I just like wearing a t-shirt and jeans. My father called it my uniform, but that's what I like.
Well, judgments in general are based mostly on appearance
Mm-hmm.
and first impressions, especially. I think appearances tend to be relative importance to most people, whether they want to admit it or not. um, I, for me, I don't know if it's because of who I am, but I find first impressions very important to me. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm meeting with a student or if I'm going out and about, um, I'm always, you know, groomed. Hair is done. Maybe I have a little makeup on.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not into fashion, so I don't follow fashion trends,
Hmm.
but I think that I dress casually but nice. You know, I do have nice clothes that I wear for formal occasions,
Oh
but
yeah, I mean, I
but
and
for the
it's
most
probably
part, it's pretty casual.
and like you were saying, no, I'm not gonna walk outside with like a stained, ripped
Yeah,
up shirt
ripped
and jeans.
shirt.
No, I'm gonna wear something relatively. I just like you. I just don't have any interest in fashion.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. Whether you have, nice clothes versus tattered, torn,
Yep.
dirty clothes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. What is your most prized possession, Ellie? Besides your students, of course.
Well, my students aren't my possessions, though. I view them as a possession, something that I
That's
would
good.
own.
But you did say you were evil, so I had to be sure.
Yeah, I'm an evil teacher. Wahaha. I've got a couple things. I have my grandmother's wedding ring. That's a
Hmm.
prized possession of mine. It's the one thing that I would be heartbroken if it was stolen or lost or, something happened to
Hmm.
it. Um, I think it would be heartbroken over that.
Hmm.
Um, it means a lot to me,
Hmm.
and so yeah, that's my most prized possession. The other one is my doll.
Okay, I see her.
Ah!
Yep, I see her.
Her name is Amy.
Oh, my sister's name is Amy.
Really? And her
Yep.
eyes have kind of clouded over. She used to be able to oh, now she looks creepy. But her eyes do close, but
Okay.
she used to have eyelashes.
Hmm.
And there but I got that doll when I was about 2 years old, and I to this day I don't know why I called her Amy, but it was the name that I gave her, and that was my pride and pride prize possession.
Hmm.
Uh, I love. Oddly enough, I still love the dang thing.
Hmm.
I this has been with me for since I was two, and it's got a lot of memories, and
Hmm.
it's just I would be sad if, but I don't think anybody's going to steal it.
Hmm.
I don't think someone's going to. Wow, I got to have that
Hmm.
doll.
You never know. Maybe they know.
You
Maybe they
never
want to.
know.
Yeah.
I can picture me like 100 years old holding this doll. It's my doll.
Hmm. Buried with Amy.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't really have prized possessions, but I would say two items that are very important to me would be a book about the Statue of Liberty that my grandmother gave me and the poster that came with it. And she gave them to me. I had to be when I was 5 or 6. And that was not just responsible for why the Statue of Liberty is a very special uh, statue for me. I refer to her as a her, not an it. But it's also why I really wanted to move to New York, which is a huge part of my personality and shaping who I am today. And the other thing that's probably very important to me would be my father's watch, which unfortunately has died, but I like to wear it kind of as a charm bracelet because it's all I really have of him physically right
Can't
now.
you fix
So
it?
I tried to have it fix it, and they just shrugged their shoulders about it. So I'm thinking about writing the company and seeing if
There,
it could be done.
is it
But
an old
it's
watch?
fine. It's a charm bracelet. It's fine. I'm happy with that.
Because there is a watchmaker in Prague that does fix watches. He's an actual watchmaker. I don't know if he how old your watch is,
Well, it's an old
but
digital watch, so I mean, I doubt that he would.
yeah, maybe
Yeah,
not.
but like I said, I have it. That's what matters.
Mm, mm,
So
okay.
How would I react to losing the book or the poster or the watch? Well, I mean, the book and the poster, they've been with me in Maine, they've been with me in New York, and the reason I'm looking off screen is they're right here with me in Prague right now. I would probably be upset. I don't know if I would be like grief stricken if your Amy was missing for you.
Yeah.
Um, Same with Dad's watch, but I mean, I would be not happy. How would you react to losing Amy?
Oh, as I said,
Yeah.
if my doll, I would be heartbroken. I would be sad. But again, I don't think anybody's going to come and say,
Mm, mhm,
I want this doll. I gotta have
mhm.
this doll. She's got toes missing from where my dog chewed her toes off.
Oh yeah.
I had another dog that chewed her pinky off, and
Hmm.
she survived a fire. My car, someone set my car on fire when I was in college. She
Someone
was in
tried to
a
assassinate Amy. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, I know, poor Amy.
Well, I mean,
So
the
yeah, I'd
book.
be sad about it, but I think I'd get over it.
Mhm.
It'd
The,
be-
the book's binding is failing. The poster's really dog-eared, and as I just said, this watch doesn't work anymore. But still have them.
it's a good idea to contact the company though. They might have a fix for you.
Yeah, Mike.
Um, if you were Jim, how would you feel about the gift you received?
Well, like I said, the story itself basically has them going.
Yeah.
So I think that
Oh, for
answers
me.
that question. Um, Della definitely seemed more excited. And, again, the story has her going, oh, my hair will grow back. It's fine. So I don't think I would be any different than how O. Henry had them being, especially with what I know. What do you think, Ellie?
No, if I received the combs, I would be happy.
Mm,
Like you've said, my hair would grow back.
hmm.
Would I ever cut my hair? No. I don't even have someone, I don't get my hair done. I cut my
Yeah,
own hair
yeah.
because every time I do go, I always complain about how short they've cut it. Like, you
Mm.
cut it too short. So
Well, I'm getting self-conscious about my own hair, but I have all my senses and mobility, so I'd rather have those.
right. Would you prefer to be financially secure or emotionally secure? So
You,
basically, would you want to have money and be crazy, or would you have
you're
zero money
asking
and
you're asking the freelancing English teacher with anxiety, would he like to be financially secure or emotionally content? Um, well,
good
having
question.
having life, many experiences where I wish one or the other, if it had to be one or the other, probably emotionally content, because being emotionally content, I can focus more on being financially secure. But on the other hand, if I'm financially secure, now I can deal with my emotions. So it's a bit chicken or the egg for me. What about
Yeah,
you,
okay.
Ellie?
Well, I'm basically financially secure. I mean, I'm not rich, but I make enough money to pay bills.
Yep,
I
I'm the same
it
way.
goes back to well, how much money do you need to live? And
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm more of a minimalist.
Yeah.
I don't I don't like shopping. I hate shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when my girlfriends say, "Let's go to the mall, go shopping," I think, "Oh God, no, please." I, if I go shopping, I need shoes. I like
Mm-hmm.
white canvas shoes. I go in, I buy white canvas
Yep.
shoes.
Yep.
I'm done for the day.
Yes.
But I have friends who spend hours shopping, and I think, "Oh no, please." You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one sitting on the bench in the mall with the packages,
Mm-hmm.
just sitting there. Um, but no, I don't find shopping enjoyable at
Mm-mm.
all. So I, I think emotionally content. Probably,
Yep.
I am content with who I am. Uh, so this question is kind of null and void for me.
No,
Um,
like
Not
you, I'm
applicable.
financially secure. Like you, I'm financially secure. And I hate shopping. I usually have everything delivered to me.
Yeah.
But as long as I have enough money to, if I feel like, go out for dinner or get a Lego set or take a trip now that the pandemic's over,
Mm,
I'm good.
mm, yeah. But I think that both are important. I think being
Yes,
emotionally stable and financially stable, I think both of these things are important. It's very difficult to say I prefer one over the other.
definitely.
Okay. Well, with that said, um, I I don't know what we're going to be talking about, but the next podcast is on the 26th. I've had
Mhm,
some health issues. I'm fine. I'm healthy. Well, right now I'm sick, but but I haven't had a lot of time to think about what kind of podcast we're going to be doing or live stream that we're going to be doing on the 26th. I
mhm,
apologize for that because I'm a planner and I like to plan ahead,
mhm.
and
Me
I'm
too.
really struggling with what I want to talk about because there's so many topics to choose from.
Mhm,
So here's what I'd like you to do. Um, in the comments section below, post a topic that you would like to listen to or participate in. Post your ideas in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you.
mhm. Me too.
Brad, any last words from you?
Um, Enjoy your reading.
Right. Choose wisely. All right, my students.
Definitely choose wisely.
Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you'll come back again for our next live stream on Monday the 26th. And if you have any comments or questions, post those in the description box below. And until
Mhm.
next time, my students, please, please keep practicing. Bye.
Bye bye.